그래서 띵이거네. 난 어다 개was domata temba midimbe 이기나네다 개와사바나 띵이거네. domata temba 사바나 개와디 개체와다. ane diwa cheba na diwa de kya chewa le sa shi de o de shi ba shi na ya da ngui bi ge go ne ane ji na sa sing ge jin ba da le chu ge jin ba da de ge na ngui bi go ne ni jin ba de ne han kya wa chewa le s ne ju bi cheba da sa sing ge chewa bu na ne sa sing ju bi cheba bu ya de ge ne kya wa chewa le s de o de shu ge di go ma shu ba ro da.
Good afternoon. So this morning we looked at the support of vows as being making an incredible difference to the amount of either virtue or non-virtue that an act will result in. And thereafter we looked at the third of the four great strengths, being that by way of the thing or the object. So this refers to, in terms of the object that one is engaging with, for example, with the illustration of generosity, that of giving a material generosity is not as virtuous as that of, or not as meritorious as that of giving of Dharma. Or if, in terms of making offerings to the Buddhas, the greater offering is offering of practice. So this is where we came to this morning.
Then we come
now to the fourth, that of attitude or motivation, great strength by way of the attitude.
Rinpoche's Pumboles, that Denige Donsum Ye Simjan Tam Je Soso Ne San Ye Chudin Reptum Jelas. Deda Layang Gawa Jewa Niedo Didando Jawa Tam Jegi Didando Jeba Dang Jeba Le and the Jansim Gi Tam Je Kembege Semna Majawa Medo Jigsam Dowa Suna Mawar Sung Des.
Reading from the text. Just here, this second line I've changed quite a bit. The Heap of Jewels Sutra says that if all the sentient beings of the billion universes were each to create a stupa of the Buddha as massive as Mount Meru, and if they and all those who are objects of respect were to pay respect to them for 10 million eons, this would not match the merit generated by a bodhisattva who never separated from the mind aspiring for omniscience, throws one single flower.
Then I'm doing Chidane that Jashisim that made him big. I'm doing Gumatic Sigore. Then you may Simjan, Donsum Ye, Simjan, Tamje, Donsum Ye, Simjan, Tamje, Tamje, Sosone, the Miriri, San Donsum Ye, Simjan, Tamje, Dina, the Miriri, Dam, Simjan, Regi, and Sosone, San Yi, Chudin, Reptum the Jelas. That's on you, Chudin Parish. 先先被全部修是不先热不怎么接了，但热不那些全部修是先接着的，但没热确定热去的，但东西没什么的，他们这些那长大年别给的那个确定全部热用过了，这边俺得到了呀，搞我叫我，你都是地当的今年都地当的叫我，他们这个地当的接吧嘞，是的，那的那个今年，那的那个得了要全部不要的了。高瓦长面吧，高瓦的年吧，高瓦接瓦，高瓦的来把整个人接瓦他高瓦接瓦接，第的年别个，安尼这个全部不要接，安尼个呀接吧，那他给我报的没吧3个了吧的。
So, as elsewhere, Lama Tsongkhapa quotes from a sutra presenting a comparison. So this comparison is of sentient beings, or those who are not bodhisattvas. So comparing non-bodhisattvas to bodhisattvas. So in the presenting the situation of for the comparison of non-bodhisattvas, if all the sentient beings of the billion universes, so in other words, as many all the sentient beings that exist, or all the non-bodhisattvas that exist, were each to create a stupa. So each and every single one themselves individually were to create a stupa, and one of immense size, as massive as Mount Meru. And they didn't just leave it at the creation or the construction of the stupa. If they and all those who are objects of respect were to pay respect to them for 10 million eons. So each of these beings, they and each other were to then pay respect to these stupas for an incredible period of time. So that's the one part of the comparison.
Dinige kewa topchimo shu segores. Dine zada dele ane janju simbe kewa sawa de kewa chigri esi orda dine janju simba jansim gi sa tamji kimbe semda madrawa side da janju sim gyula geje janju simba dige khasa semje tamji de sanyo go bon toba jibe janju nyogo deni gi dumba yore esi orda semje madrawa side tamji kimbe semda madrawa je sanyo go bon togudu sembe topju yukune lande janju semda madrawa je 디 janju simbi simbi tone ane medo jikzam dorwa da medo jik zam ya go cheba gonjoli ya cheba dusin puwa ina di suenam di ane mangwar songde jisan di janju simbi ma simbi janju sim ma gebe gansa janju simbi ma simbi ge gansa dongo simbi simje re ge ane ji chedin ja chenbo re shen dele yan chebo puya da be lo mangbo dongda jewa mangbo an dusine chebo puyu sunam saba dele janjusim gyula geje janjusim badike janjusim yukune lade sangyo go bon tobar chedu ani medo ganji puwa ina di sunam de sunam cheware es mangwa sonde.
So one can imagine from such an imaginary act being done, so all the sentient beings throughout the world systems, all of them creating a massive stupa and making offerings for an immense period of time, one can imagine just how much merit would be created. But then if one compares that to just a single bodhisattva, so one ordinary bodhisattva, the text continues, this would not match the merit generated by a bodhisattva who never separated from the mind aspiring for omniscience. So this is a different way of saying aspiring to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. It's never separated from that mind, so they have uncontrived bodhicitta. And then more literally, it's the word throw, but the meaning would be like offer, but perhaps toss just a single flower. So just from that act, an ordinary bodhisattva, so a being with uncontrived bodhicitta, merely tossing a single flower to a stupa would create more merit than the merit created by all those ordinary beings.
아니 제가 이 김전 송거래 대신도 톱자 초면다 다른 간절에 가르스네 디수는 채와 이 김전 가르스 심전 전주선바디기 아니 제도 제와 심전 탐제 동아 타다의 죄시 야 심제 탐제 동아 타의 야 상계설로 구비 치도 심제 탐제기 된다 아니 톱자디야 톱자 타도 상계 고방 대야 아니 심제 탐제기 된 개체 뭐 주발라 안 초도 교바 아니 상계 고방 디 아니 심증이 된다라야 심증이 디기 주비야다 동화세게 된다라 니 톱을 되어봐 되비 군로 인자다 군로디 데니게 군로 전주 심심바다 디 군로 개체 뭐 니를 하베게 군로 개체와지 매버다 세상 체도지 봐 심제 탐지게 체도 미 데네 톱자 대야 톱자 타도 나 상계 고방 톱을 지기 심비 여바다 안 람냠는 제바디야 심증이 된다리야 안 가와 빠도 매바 냠내시네 냠내 지긴 심비게 데니게 삼바 개체 뭐 여바 인자 데니게 삼바 개춘버디게 심비 토 여바자 데니 메도어로지 주게와 쟨 제바네 따뜻 개와 딜레 체와 인데이 메도 충 메도지 푸와 좀 유선음디야 선음 개체와레 심비 금데다 군롱 장슈 심비 굴레 심바 지자디 심자 탐지교도도 치도 자와 심자 탐지교도도 톱자 타도 산조고방 톱을 되바 인자 군롱 여바 인자 니 체네다 개와디 개체 마차고레 예시레 지금 로메다데 로메던데 제와 인비 김전에 시에다.
The reason is as presented earlier. What makes a bodhisattva stand out from non-bodhisattvas is that quality of bodhicitta on their continuum. And bodhicitta has these two aspects. So the one aspect is they are wanting to benefit not just themselves, not just their loved ones, but each and every being. And it's not just each and every being merely accepted on a theoretical basis. They've developed a closeness, a tenderness towards all beings, whomever they are. And they want to benefit all these beings in the most important of ways, not just to enable them to overcome suffering temporarily, but wanting them to be guided to attain complete freedom from suffering, so they never have to suffer again. So they're holding in their heart equally each and every single sentient being and wanting to help them in the most important of ways. And the second aspect is that to do so, the bodhisattva has committed to becoming a Buddha, because it's only by becoming a Buddha that the bodhisattva will be able to bring to reality, to fulfill their aspiration. And they know that to become a Buddha is not something that's going to be achieved quickly, but it's going to take an immense amount of effort over an incredible period of time. But that doesn't daunt them at all. Why it doesn't daunt them is they know as they gather strength and skills and capacity, they'll be benefiting others, benefiting ever more beings in ever more skillful ways. So this just gives strength to the mind. So therefore, because of these two qualities on the mind of the bodhisattva, holding all beings dear, and not just holding them dear, wanting to lead them to gain complete freedom of suffering, and to do so to become a Buddha, with such a motivation, even doing something like offering just a flower, not a big deal, just a flower to the Buddhas, and doing so only once, they create so much merit because of the quality of that motivation.
Nyamso len ro chang ju gi karche gore la na nga ju gi la chen ju sem yo mare me ba ina ya da nga ju gi chi ke wa karu tu be ne di nye le ya ane ji sem jan tham je de wa de temper sho sem be jamba kom ya sem jan du nga la dawa sho sem be ni ji kom ya da sem jan tham je le ya di gi tu ya du nga se ni pan do tu gi sem be ge la sam ge di zang sem jan tham je gi de san yo ko ba to ba sho sem be ge sam lo chik ta de ne gi ge ne da jan ju sem mo ne ge me na yang an ju ge de ne ge sam lo ta sem ji ge je de ne ge an ge wa tu ba yin da ni ti ge wa tu ya de so so ka ru kom ja ba yin da ane ji ge jin be nyam len che ba na ne de ne ge ane ji ge cha che wa che bo pu ya la so ka le che be na de ne ge sam lo ku ne la je samlo ta chi ge wa tu ba na da ge wa di chok tu ge ba cha cha ge ro ba ka re se ne che do che ba sem ja tham ji ge de sam ta ya da an top ja thar do san yo ko ba tu bi chi do ane sam ta je ge wa tu ba yin za ge wa di da ge chi ba sa ge yes che san da zo ge wa ma ru nye le ya kun lo ma so ne de ne sam dang go re se de lab je di nang ko ro ba dang ra su snim la nang go re se.
The way that we should then take an illustration such as this is as inspiration. One, to develop deep respect for those who have generated bodhicitta, deep respect for bodhisattvas, as well as to develop a deep yearning to join them, to also become a bodhisattva. And not merely to have a yearning for that, but to act out that yearning. And the way we act that yearning out is we sit quietly, we reflect on the sufferings of samsara, generating a determination to gain freedom from the sufferings of samsara, and use that as a basis to generate love and compassion for all beings, wanting all beings without exception to also attain a state freed of suffering, abiding in lasting happiness, and develop then the wholehearted resolve, the determination, I will do so. It's my responsibility to ensure each and every being transforms their mind into a state freed of suffering. And to do so, I must become a Buddha. And thereby one generates bodhicitta oneself. And then one can, by dedicating that merit, one is creating the causes to become a bodhisattva oneself. Moreover, if one, with this motivation, then makes some offerings, or does some prostrations, or go about one's activities, whatever it may be, with such a motivation, one is accruing the virtue that will lead to us becoming bodhisattvas and eventually Buddhas. So this, in terms of our capacity, is entirely possible. And this is a focus for our life, to develop this our habituation to this way of thinking. And in this way, bring it the time when we will actually arise as bodhisattvas ever closer.
Digi Gawa the Kachimutu to a Chagoro, Chizadang to Kawa Karuna Yelia, and Jamro Semge said Jamro Semge said this Ogunoda, Jamro Semge, Gedi Zada, those Chinangazi, those challenging Yamnajality, basically, Chehores Morwada.
So hence, it is the attitude with which we engage in activities, or the motivation we cultivate, is so very important. And therefore, you will have been receiving the advice for years now. Start your day, generate the motivation of bodhicitta. Try and engage in your various activities with the motivation of bodhicitta, because the result is so fantastic.
치중고래서 대신도 톱자 초면다 톱자기 유디에는 야가 초바데 멤버 디켜바데네 엔게바 중고래서로다 톱자 초면다 라신게 된라 미바소 선비 개발당서 제자당도 톱자 근데 톱자 초면세도다 군노래야 근데 체디점기 디기주에게 삼다제 엔게바 주베나 다게바디 충화제 난 심전 가서 개와치마 원료 고방 토비 치르도 삼다지 개와 주바이나 나 세디즘이 대화지당 개와치마 원료 고바데 인디 개와치마 원료 고바데 초차그로 디기 디군의 롱와자 군롱의 토네 개와 주바나다 개와디 개와 숙체 차고래 지래 다디나시 원료 고방딜레 디고 사 개와치마 원료 고방 토비지 개와 사바딜레 탈비오 고방 토비지 코르 동안 타달을 줘지 탈비오 고방 토구도 선배 탈비오 돈이 이제 삼바제제 톱자 문디오 고방을 초도교와 야가디다 탈비오 고방이지 다 탈비오 고방 토야기 디돈도 이르지 내게와 주바나 디게와디 차바레서 그러다 토만다 초만 지소 엔디나시 다 대시 다 가서 라다 신기 돈라 미네시도와 제자다 라나 신기 되는 가서를 처음에다 다르비오 고방 토발레 초데 다심제 탐주도 산유 고방 토야 지르바다 제가 딜레 초 아니 다르비오 고방 토비지를 개와사바 딜레 심제 탐주도 산유 고방 토발지도 토비 치르도 톱제 타르도 라나메바 산유 고방디 디 토비 치르도 군에 라제 개와사바에는 디 개와디 숙체레 사지 무도시네 대신도 톱자 초만당 세 디세월다 톱자 토만 초다 야두게 디기 토네 군에 라지 군롱의 토네 개와 주바나 개와 치춘디 용을 했어요.
Lama Tsongkhapa continues. Likewise, a difference in attitude. So yeah, attitude or motivation, Lama Tsongkhapa is presenting how as one develops one's motivation grows in strength and capacity, the virtue that from one's endeavors will also grow as well. Likewise, difference in attitude, such as aspiring for higher or lower goals. So this then refers to the goals of the Dharma. So the initial goal is to develop a determination to achieve further excellent rebirths. And the middling aspiration is to develop a deep yearning to gain liberation from these suffering realms of samsara, freedom from the pain and misery of being a samsaric being. And the greatest goal, the supreme goal, the highest goal, is that of Buddhahood, the determination to become a Buddha for the sake of others. And this then links to, or focusing on one's own or others' purpose or goal, where one's own purpose would be to achieve a good rebirth just for oneself, or liberation for oneself, and others would be the goal to become a Buddha for the sake of others. And as one develops one's motivation, in particular, when one develops the motivation, the supreme motivation of wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of others, the preceding stages will naturally come about. Because to become a Buddha, one needs an ongoing succession of excellent rebirths. So therefore, one will continue to gain excellent rebirths, and one will eventually attain one's liberation. One's mind will become liberated from the afflictions, and thereby one will gain freedom from suffering as one progresses towards the eventual attainment of the highest of goals, which is for the purpose of others.
Da jimba da tsurim songa kewa tile shen gi donda samda shen digi juya da dunga seye samda je kewa tuba di da di kewa chewa res da rang da shen gi donla mine es chida da rang gi donla mine kewa tuba tile kewa tile da shen gi donda samda je kewa tuba di kewa dik chewa res.
Furthermore, in terms of self and other, one's own or other's purpose, when one engages in a virtuous act, let's say generosity, if one is doing so that one achieves a good result for oneself, one creates a certain level of merit. But if one is doing so as to benefit others, in particular all others, then one accrues so much merit. So the difference here, whether it's generosity or another virtuous act, is in one's motivation. Is one doing so sincerely for oneself or sincerely for others?
소소 땡을 삼는다 랑이 소 현다 된다 제시 소소 맞은 소소 교부체 소소 경험하게 선빙아서 삼나데 연구로와 아 디네 삼고데 이네 디 연구 말에 현심전 탐지게 된다려 아니 지게 디기 주야다 판도하게 디 동아세에 된다려 자와치기도 개와도 수사기로 소소랑 사기로와다 지 소소랑 사변은 소소랑야 야 디기 권에 권도 패디 토고 체거로와 배나 저 뭐라 당하지나 미 마보지 뭐라 주제 되는 이 파셜 파기인 선비게 다 소소 주긴 섬거만 미 현다디게 파기인 선비게 사지될 파기에게 삼단 당에도 나 된다 현 계획에 된다 현리에 판도 삼다지 파기고르데 이나라님 주고르와데 파셜레스들 섬진 현다들 레도 소소들 레어와다 어디나신레스 지사다 현이 된다 삼다지 제도 소소게 다 라슈게 소소게 개와데 소수게데 베네시에 동아세야다 신이 디기 두야 된다라 나한지기 삼노 셴코나 삼다지 개와 두바이나 개와도 수주고서 안주 주고르와다 소수 주고라 소수 주데 개와도 소소 사이거와다 소소 사바인자 디디부티기디 소소를 연구하와 제자디 시 안가지 어다 신이 된다 판도로 개와로 대신 소수 된다 삼마탄에 소소 경험을 세선 배삼는디 네 삼당고 말디 경험을 말했을 거다.
To develop a genuine attitude that places the needs of others first and foremost, this is difficult to do because there is the fear, but what about myself? So when training, one needs to develop this a clear understanding that by genuinely working for others, you will not go without. So this needs a regular attention from oneself so as to eventually develop a genuine other-focused attitude. And so a reason that you can apply is that when genuinely working for the welfare of others and achieving the welfare of others, their lives are improving through your efforts. You are not being excluded from the benefit of your activities because on whose continuum is this virtue being accumulated? It's on your own continuum. Even though you may have a genuine attitude of wanting to place the fulfillments of the needs of others first, that genuine motivation, where does it abide? On your continuum. Therefore, the resulting virtue abides on your continuum, even though you are focused on fulfilling the needs of others. So in our initial training, we need to be very aware of this, because we need to overcome this self-centered attitude, that fear that, but what about me? I don't want to suffer. And then to give an analogy, if you are taking a group of people somewhere, you're driving them somewhere, and when you arrive at the destination, not only do they arrive at the destination, but so do you. It's not like you are still left at the starting point and they've arrived at their destination. You have gone there with them. Likewise, when helping others, you are not left out. You are not left alone now to suffer and others are having everything go well for them. The virtue that you're accumulating is being accumulated on your continuum.
That is something going there. That in some of the shoot Charlie down and the Junring Lutonia, Gawat Shuchi, they young, some of the answer, the some of the Gunodias or Gunodea, shoot Jashen down, Junring Dungu Gone, Yan Shepherd Chaos.
Lama Tsongkhapa continues to talk about the quality of the motivation to cultivate. The attitude or the motivation should be understood also in terms of greater or lesser intensity and longer or shorter duration.
Then Gawa to do that you Gawa to a similar Simshu Shirai made against Druya Gawa Chuan check the S or the same dear shoot jar, she has a shoot jar and shoot chair, but Gunon must bear shoot him with Chimborage. She has did that, the niggish, and then shoot him by that Chunjora, she and then Cheva in the Gunolia shoot up war you in the Gawa Chedi bear. Nikanala the shoot up Yuna, Gawa Dubana, Gawa the shoot essay.
So think about the intensity of the motivation. Here, it should be clear how the intensity of the motivation will have a direct impact on the amount of merit created and the quality of the outcome. So when one's wish to be of benefit comes from deep within, immense virtue will be created. But if one either doesn't really make much effort to cultivate a virtuous motivation, or one generates a motivation, but it's not much more than a mere recitation of words as opposed to heartfelt, then the amount of virtue created, the benefit that will follow, is greatly reduced.
Zadang Zuki Gawa to Dukala, Guno Shukchishon Sadi, Dangazukundala, Bene Jisangi, Sanyi, Yundian Jada, and the Sanyi, and Yundian Sanyi, Devaki, and Denig some died, Denig and a chicken Sosugi, Yundian Jada, Devaki, Sanyi, Deva Shuche, Rana getting Chimboimba some died, Delian, Sanyi, Deva Shuche Ligorova. And the Nigins at the Sanyi to be Lamdin Dere, pass some Taj other Corridunga Tadal, draw the Taptimatum and the teach in Jimmy Cheho to send some Kino, and some of the shoe shares, Gorva. And the Nigim, then Kusun Sanyi and then Jada, the Nigi and the Corridunga Dredge, Delia, Tower, and be some lorry. Shall I made in that Jina or the Jigger in Gavara Chesson, the Nishi Push and the Yahuda Sempe, the Nigga some now and Kuno did just chamber Chagor, watch the Nigga Tone, then the Kuno Shushijun Yadi, Gabrielia, Sosarangi, Didi Gable, Chick Chopi, Nakarina, that Chick Sosugi, Yundian Tenche, Yundian, Jumzen Tonwa, some Davana, Delia, J. Gawache, to take some of the Shukche Chagorwa.
It's really useful if one has the habit to generate a virtuous motivation at the start of one's day, and in particular, if one can remind oneself of that motivation so it stays fresh within. Then one's activities will be much more influenced by that motivation, and thereby the quality of the results will be greatly enhanced. And here there are two key aspects in terms of generating a powerful motivation. One is to recall benefits, and secondly, to do so together with reasons. So, for example, through recalling the great qualities of the Buddha, in terms of the various qualities of the Buddha and the kindness that the Buddha has brought into the life of yourself and so many beings, a deep faith and appreciation for the Buddha will arise. And using that then to generate the wish, may I become a Buddha too, so that I can have such a positive impact on others, and thereby help others also to gain freedom from suffering, to ease their suffering and eventually gain liberation from suffering. And using this then, both reasons as well as a recollection of benefits to generate a powerful motivation before engaging in a virtuous act, the quality of that motivation then is much more likely to be sincere, to be heartfelt, rather than merely reciting a formula in one's mind.
And Pamig Alia and Lobsang Dorje dan do suit Lam Dangore, Chesatang Alia do Lord dan Kalatea, Lobsang Dorje, Chasangi Pamichigor, Sambigis, Pamigi, getting to get some diner, and put only Pamat Bay, Abu Simbigi, Pamalia, Zewache, Shirwa. Young Kajibu, she did some Madaje, that the Naladi or the corons would corons of going to Google, or corons of going to get it, and the corons of going to get the Naldi Josota that is. That was the corons in Jimmy or some done Pamalia Zewasha Yung Marwadi, because you just some time hang 20 Dini Yungor.
If we think of two different children and their attitude towards their parents, so one child has a real appreciation for what their parents do for them, or how hard they work, or their sacrifice to fulfill the needs of the child. The child recognizes, I'm only have something to eat and I'm clothed and have an education because of the hard work of my parents, because of the sacrifices of my parents. So such a child will have a real appreciation for their parents. And when they act in ways to help the parents, you can imagine it's coming from a sincere place, a good place. But another child takes the same activities, the same kindness of their parents for granted, thinking, well, of course, this is what parents are meant to do, and this is what they should be doing. There's nothing special here. Can you see the very different attitude? And therefore, the second child, should they do anything for their parents, they won't be doing it with much feeling, with much warmth. And therefore, we can see how different the merit will be that they each create.
On the Yun Ringdung Tone, Dangan Ganzo Bene Gawatruina, giving Yamna Chikarchevina, the Yun Ringbu Mutuche, the Katina Yunbu Chavana, and Gawati, Gawachavares. As a Gawachik drew a Gawachik weapon, Turum Soyaru, some Damena, Lunga Yejutomia, Turum Soya Samtana, Sarchi, Danimichi, then Samta, and Dimbayan do Shashavena, Jai. Gawatruva Tela, Muduja some died, Muduja Gunin Buga drew the Gawat Chavari, such the Gunin Tunda, so you couldn't Shevacha was at the Sudwa.
So that's in terms of greater or less intensity, but also in terms of duration, longer or shorter duration. So if one sometimes, or just very briefly, thinks about the benefits, for example, of restraining one's physical and verbal behavior from non-virtue and restraining one's mind from the afflictions. If this is just an occasional thought and it's only a fleeting thought, then whilst worthwhile, the benefit is quite little. Whereas if one meditates, reflects deeply for a sustained period on the benefits of restraining one's physical, verbal, and mental behavior, the effect on one's mind and thereby one's motivation will be immense.
I didn't say that Dondala, Gawatu Sayati, Lokuno, Tone, some Dabino, Kulon, somebody, that's some Lokazi Chewa in a D tone, Gawasana Gawati Chewata. Now Rana Shenyi Nane, Casa Topja di Nane, Torja, and Tarduk di that Chomin tone Gawache, and the Topja Tarduk di some Daje, Gawatuvana Gawachewa. Rana Shenyi some dane, Shenyi Dona some Daji Gawatuvana Gawachewa. Dan Duzu ki samtabane Gunringbo Basa Samlo Shukching or some Nakuno Shutabu, Denegi Tone Gawa Tubana, Gawa Shukchawa. Dene and they are Mutu Tubana, Gawa Shukchawa, yes, all those in a Gawa Gache Yungre said the nigger sumba down to the Hago Tone, down to get current Nango Wars and that. Kunol Masona, some Shuchawadi, that to get Semja Tamji to San Yoko Toro Show, Sibian, some Tamana, some of the dealer Shuchawachi Mare, rather some of Kacha Mare, some of the Titone, some Dana. Diana and Topja some Dana, Nekasore. Topja some Dana, Topja Semja Tamji, San Yoko Toro did that Topja Tardu Roba, she's not San Yoko Toro Chicken Simbi, Topja San Yoko Matilla some da. Dene and the Jigge, Deam. Rana Shen doing some de Semja Tamji Donda some Dangorova. That Denigi, that Dondala, Janju Sim Yukunia, Jan to Kyo Tubaina, and Del Garsangorasine, Kuno Kachawa, the Tangor, Kuno, some Kuno Chisho de Ligorova. Rana Shen Yudon Nane, Shen Yudonda some Dangorova. That Dene, and Gasore. Topja Chodam and is in Topja Chodu give us some Dangora did, Jazan Janju Sim some dancing as Kawa Tubaina, D some died, did some Sangurua. That Denigida, that Randa Shengi don't Jibba Shengi don't Chigorova, or Deni Cheva Chazan Sangora, that day, Denigit somewhat in that, the Moody Chevena, and they said, they want to do that D some died, Moody Yana Yano, some dan Kawa Tubaina, Dina Sonia de Chazan Sangura, Jazan Denizang, Angicula, Janjusem Gule, that Janjusem Banamgi, Dusniam Nangores, Nangores, Jazan Anjuinea, and Dusin and Nangores, or Kuno Janjusim Yugunia, Sem Tobja San Yoko want to be Chirdo, and Sem Jatamji San Yoko want to be Chirdo, Tobasho Sim Yugunia, Laje, Dineke to Gores, Dineke to get the other Mutuche. And Yamleche or Jesus, no anybody that to Sungor Ding and to do Yamsilima, Shepherd Chow said it in a tony and Simsling or less, I watch your rest. Jisan Zunji, Yamleche by Nada, Gunibu Muti the legal watch and this or Gunu, which is a Mutin Chena, Gunibu Chena, Pain Chow, they said it. Then there's some that Chevena Chazan Sound was a Kuma Shu Chair, they are Sangudo. Rana Shendu in a Shengu, Shendu in by a Sangudo, and then the Topja some done, Topja Choman in the Chotu body and Ligore, that in a Moody Church in the Moody Chevan, Gunum Bucheva de Ligor was, Zandine and Zadi, the nation of the Dusine, giving him the Chevorias or Sumardine, Gava Gachamasat Urias.
Here then we've covered some key points in terms of the cultivation of a motivation. So you've heard so many times the motivation is crucial to what determines whether something is virtuous or not and how virtuous it is. So take these key points mentioned here, take them to heart, hold them in mind and live in accordance with them. So specifically here referring to likewise the difference in attitude, such as aspiring for a higher or lower goal, or focusing on one's own or others' purpose, should be understood also in terms of greater or less intensity and longer or shorter duration. So take these points to heart. And amongst the various motivations, so if we look at the first point, higher or lower goal, there is no higher motivation than that of bodhicitta. So try and generate this motivation of bodhicitta again and again. Try and have this as the guiding light in your life. And to do so, you need to meditate in the way you've been guided in so many times. Because it's through this process of engaging in this meditation every day and trying to sustain it throughout the day that it will become habituated to you. It will become who you are. It will be your very essence, your very heart within. And why bodhicitta is so praised is because of these two qualities of bodhicitta, or these two aspects of bodhicitta. So the first has the two components of being in relation to all sentient beings equally. One abandons the feeling of, this is my group, these are the ones who matter more than those. This is abandoned. So every single sentient being throughout the realms of the universe, all of them one holds as dear. And holding them as dear doesn't stop at a feeling of closeness and affection, but one knows one has a responsibility towards them, in particular, to help them gain freedom from suffering. So this is crucial, because what comes with the understanding of what freedom from suffering means. With that understanding, when one helps others, even in insignificant ways, one will be doing so with the motivation to be able to help them in the most important of ways. And that then links to the second part of the motivation of bodhicitta, which is one wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all beings, because it's only then that one can interact with others free of any hindrance on one's own mind, and thereby interact with them in the way that's most suited to them there and then. So therefore, this motivation of bodhicitta has these three aspects. It's in relation to all sentient beings, wanting to free them from suffering entirely, or guide them to gain freedom from suffering entirely, and to do so, to become a Buddha. So with this developed, these first two parts, a higher goal is achieved, and one is focusing on others' purpose. So these two parts, one is already doing to the very best of one's capacity. And to bring about intensity, what goes on to next, intensity, this will come from repeatedly engaging these meditations, hearing teachings, reflecting on the teachings, opening oneself up, becoming habituated to this way of thinking. And this process of repetition, which leads to habituation, impacts the duration. So thereby, engaging in this meditation in the way that you've been guided many times will fulfill all these components of the superior motivation. And also, it leads to the cultivation of enthusiastic perseverance. Because to become a bodhisattva, and then as a bodhisattva to become a Buddha, it's imperative that one is enthusiastic about benefiting others, enthusiastic about virtuous endeavors. Enthusiastic and being enthusiastic will mean the duration of the path, the intensity of one's practice that is required. This will not put one off at all. In fact, one will be enthusiastic about having to be amongst others and helping them in every way you can. So by engaging in this meditation, cultivating the highest of goals, focused on others, and an intense outlook with a duration that is extensive, this will build one's joyous perseverance.
Never divasabala, that chivares, that chiva samlo de divache, samlo kuno, kazi shuk chewage, and it divasada, divachawada, the nigi mutiche, divachevana, divachawadi, chivachagorva, delia. Never choba la yang, san yomo big, samba shuk traba tang, junua topchelas. Jezanda nyomo choba yang sidu. Deshi manju gewa samlo dila top chewa da shuk chewa gyuniwa khachena gewa mangbosa thuba nashi da diba cheba nyeba dibi ilagaru chebe ne nyomo ba khaze shuk chewa yoba da gyuning be gewe dibi chawa de mudu che gyunibo cheba na diba top chewa yongre yesasi.
But these points just mentioned in how to cultivate a powerful motivation or attitude is not only in relation to virtue, but also non-virtue. This is the next sentence, the final sentence in the paragraph. When it comes to faulty conduct, an intense afflicted attitude and long duration also have great strength. So this then really comes down to the intensity of the afflictions in the mind, and then thereby the duration of those afflictions. So to the extent that one is habituated to the afflictions, not noticing them, not seeing them as wrong, to that extent, one will engage in intense and in non-virtue with an intensely powerful affliction, and that affliction may well abide for a great duration, and thereby leading to an immense amount of non-virtue being accumulated.
there's Magawi Tone Tsusheva, be Kondoshu, Lanche Kolia, Nebi, Samba Shukshimu, Bejik Kolia, Denigi, Neg, some Shukshimu, Nanji Tsusheva, that's some of the Shukshawa was, and Denigi some done Tsusheva, Diva Chawa Sagro, Dina Shin, that's Simja Socha Chebalaya, and the Simja Socha Jiba Inaya, Kajeda, Denigi, Sharad, Chik Sochudigus, Servat. Sugar the in a Kaja, Chick Kondo Shulan Telia Corpe, Chick Magawa Shuchin, Corona Suya Jungurua, and dinner survey, the Nigi, and then Yamope, some of the Shuchas, as some soldier Jeba Jiba Inaya, Yomo, Bokondo, the Shuchi, the Nigi, Drapo Yingi, the Tibetan Chesagor, watch it, Chisant, Yomoba, Yomobe, Samba, Shutra, Drapo Wongi, that Tibetan Chesagor said.
So, for example, if anger arises within you towards someone, if that anger is slight, you'll most probably be able to deal with it okay. But if that anger is intense, one is likely to express it. And if that anger has completely overwhelmed you, you'll end up swearing at the other person, screaming at the other person. So such behavior comes from a powerful afflicted mind. In this instance of anger, probably also with ignorance, the confused ignorance seeing what one is doing as justified. And from this then, of course, powerful non-virtue is accumulated. And this may be enhanced further by the intensity in terms of or the duration of this anger, in terms of a long abiding hatred towards this person. That every time for an extensive period of time, every time you think of them, mind of dislike, of separation arises. So in this way, we can see from the intensity of the affliction and the duration of the affliction, powerful non-virtue is accumulated.
On the ring, Union was said when the Simja Sochi, Tarajik Sochi, big Tibatida, the Mudish Sochi, Sheba, and the Mudish, the Union was Chagro, is a Mudish Sochi, did the Tibachavari, such as Sumorwanda.
And there's a similar illustration, killing a sentient being, just killing a sentient being, or doing it again and again and again. We can clearly see how the second will lead to so much non-virtue coming.
Under the Nyumomba Sim Shuk Chedu Dang, the Negi Yuning Lutone, Dipachichon Yores at the Mashisaya. That in Nane Dang, the Nyumomba Nane Ya, that Yasha Kondro, Naja. Maribala soba nyomombo mongbo yorde di nane ta kondro di dibashi chesho rejere di nane jang kondro shindu topche de sa.
So in this particular strength, we covered the first sub-outline, now the second outline, which looks at amongst the many afflictions, the great negativity that anger leads to. Also among the mental afflictions, anger is particularly strong.
Payimbi Kimsendi the Junjules, Gawa Dondo Sabayi, Jinnan Dershe, Chebaso, Leche Gayin, Degunyang, Hondo Jigi Jumbarches.
Lama Tsongkhapa quotes from Shantideva. And I've just changed a word in the third line. Whatever good conduct has been amassed over 1,000 eons by generosity and venerating those gone to bliss, and so on, is all destroyed by one moment of anger.
Nagawa Dondo Sabayi, Jinnan Deshe Chela So, said the Dangan Shenlia, Jimbatan, Jimbataya, Dine, Din Shabalaya, Chebo Puje, Cho Puje, Gawa Saba, Dinegi, Dagawa, Blomangwira, Gawa Dondo La Soba Sadeva Inaya, Dine Gawa Sadeva Ina, Leche Kain, Degunya, Dinigi Leches, and Dinikivi, Jawakain, Gawakain, but that's how much it is. Gun, Condor Jigi Jumbachi, said the Condor Jigi, said the Condor, Daddy, Condor Gise, you, Jajusemba Jilla, and the Condor Savaina, and the Dinigi Gawatondo Sabi divided by Kasai Gawadi by Jumduri, so Condor Jigi Jumbachi, said the Condor Sahan, Zuki, Sosoki Budu Jigi, Condor Sasa, you, Jajusemba Jilla, Condor Savaina, and divided Kish, Jum Grace at this morning.
As it says, whatever good conduct has been amassed, so all the virtue one has accumulated over an extensive period, 1,000 eons, by giving or generosity, and venerating those gone to bliss, so Sugatas, the Buddhas, and so on, is all destroyed by one moment of anger. So this final line, destroyed by one moment of anger. So this refers to if one is angry towards a bodhisattva, then the non-virtue accrued is so powerful that it will destroy all this previously accumulated virtue. Again, as clarifying that what we have in the last line is correct. It says one moment, because the Tibetan literally says just one. So one instance or one moment, which is a bit different. But he says the meaning is a single moment, one moment of anger. So when ourselves as ordinary beings get angry at our fellow ordinary beings, it is non-virtuous, but not to this extent. This specifically refers to when we are angry at these very powerful objects, bodhisattvas or Buddhas. Then the non-virtue is as described here. But when one is being angry at a fellow ordinary being, then whilst non-virtuous, it's not to this extent.
And Kewa Chewa Diba Chewa said, and a shingy doble said the Chagura, Chipare shingy doble, Kisinda Sanjeta, Conjo Sumna, Sanjeta, Jesukedunia, and the Chupapu and the Kewa Chewa, and Delich in the Tiba Sawa and the Tiba Chewa said, Chisa shingy dop Chanju Semba, and Simja Tamjigudunda, Shendus, Chedo Chewa, Simja Tamjigudunda, Topja Tardo, Simja Tamjigudunda, Dia Simja Tamjigudunda, and Topja Toba Dish Yamne Chiguba. And the corner Saba and the Gishi Gavana, the divide bottom of Chimushu Sagor said, Divashu Sachi, Sosu Kawatiki Majum to Gore said this one.
We recall what we looked at last night. The first of these 4 points, which is that the great strength by way of the field or recipient, that virtuous or non-virtuous acts directed towards the three jewels, lamas, those like lamas, one's parents, and bodhisattvas lead to a powerful result. So therefore, if one is angry at a bodhisattva, then great non-virtue is accumulated. So this ties precisely to what we looked at last night. And again, the reason is because of the quality of the mind of bodhicitta that abides on the continuum. It is that makes him so precious, that one is angry at a being who in their heart holds all beings as dear, and doesn't just hold them as dear, but wants to benefit them in the most important of ways, the supreme way, lead them to attain a state freed of suffering. And therefore, this bodhisattva is striving to become a Buddha for the sake of others. This is why being angry at them leads to such powerful non-virtue.
Quando le conto chiese a mares, casne, tipo sede, that debi nyomo particularly ligori mato, sudan sumegi, the nyomo yore, the condole tipo mares, tipo sai mares. 그래서 건조게 something 모션 염축 톱사로 신이었고 something 모션 염축 톱아자 디바 건조를 쌓아요 말이죠.
So this is advice being given to us beings in the desire realm. For those who have either are born in the formal formless realm or have developed the concentration of the form realm or an absorption of the formless realm, this advice doesn't apply because their afflictions of the desire realm are suppressed. They do not get angry. So therefore, this advice isn't for them as a being with a mind of the formal formless realm because they cannot get angry. It's specifically for us desire realm beings.
디바세디 나중에 나송을 계획이 규샤셔로 와다 나송의 때에 동안여야다 나송의 때야 아니 계획이 직레 지사용도다 디바사죠. 제가 수단 수매비의 간사 데게야 녀모베 기워데 나송을 계획이 레사고 말 혼술라 사요마 사고 말 제가 혼술 디고요 말세 디스
Some beings in samsara all have afflictions, but there is a marked difference between those of the desire realm and those of the form and formless realm. So those of the desire realm, our non-virtue can lead us to rebirth in the lower realms. Whilst the beings in the form and formless realms have afflictions, those afflictions cannot lead to non-virtue that leads to rebirth in the lower realms.
만주게 되베 가자 가지 미나야 되베 가자 하다 미수이네 지지 신의 줍딩에 전 줍신의 줍검 신의 톱 되네 신의 디되네 한섬 섬지 무신임주 줍시에 무신임주제 톱소나 아니 되베 녀모 원주와 타쳐서 사본에 제바 마바나 원주와 마좀 두고래 되베 콘로게 매바 차르고 제사다 되네자 디 섬데 무신임주 톱 되게 미나 되베를 하이네 제소냐 디바사에 매래 모신 염죽 모신 염죽세 좋은 거다 모신 염죽세네 녀모버게 되비 녀모 빠야게 배제제제 되비 녀모바 원주와 준비게 니버 토야게 셈지 토야 좋은 거를 셈지 아 원시 말에 원시세의 제락부지로와 네 원시세다 대비 녀모 원주와 준비게다 띵이진지 토고래 이 대랑 원시 염죽이라고 그래 그래서 톱살이다 지금 심 토고를 거기 얘기하래 제가 수딩아도 미디어 되비 미래대 이나 땡텔에 띵이죠 검제 수감게 셈디랑 길게 두고래 제가 무슨 염식세 기두고 디게서나 답나데 되비 녀모 되비 되샤 콘도 나야 쳐서 게 말해 뭐 사번에 제가 방요 말이 이나 내가 불이야 봐 가샤를 게 매버 차를 원주어 좀 말해줘
So the process by which we can achieve this state in this very life as ordinary desire realm beings is to develop single pointed concentration, calm abiding, and then develop this further to where we attain a mind of the form realm, attain a mind of the first concentration of the form realm. So we'll still have this body, we'll still be here, but we'll have developed the quality of mind that is a mind of the form realm. And with that, one develops another quality, I don't know this word, and with that quality, one suppresses the desire realm afflictions. One is not free of the afflictions, one has the afflictions of the being of the first concentration of the form realm, but the afflictions of the desire realm are suppressed. So this is something that beings within the desire realm can and do achieve.
And then the shoulder my shama the delay didn't show us.
So I just went on a little bit of a detour. This is not so applicable to what we have here, but nevertheless, it's interesting to know.
창보로 충분히 줘봐 당사 내래 장 Geshe la chowa ni shindu chi des, dingi zin jebo les, ne, dadunda la, dishi kan diba chewa re se di, dad, dina diba kaso kondro kese yu, changbor chungbo jeba, an dele jan, Geshe la chanchu senpa la ya, chowa di diba shindu chewa res.
Lama Tsongkhapa continues. Here, anger towards those who perfectly observe their celibacy is very heavy, and anger towards bodhisattvas is heavier still.
창보로 충분히 줘봐 세디 나는 저게 답변 최초로 집행하는 저게 라마치네 왕념도 쉬베 왕념도 쉬야리네 제다 전주심비 돈바 원수 련바념도 쉬야라서 내내 이나다 창보로 충분히 줘봐 최초 창보로 충분히 줘봐 안제사 디네게 나온 편들이야 현다지레스미 디네게 저와메게 미치로 코라산 사와레 소수게다 최초 안 디네게 질이야 코라사와네 디바 채와레 세월에 그래서 제자 자주심비 돈바 쉬야레 안에지 곰제 냠냠네 지간 담바르기 로마치기 개인지 로마치바 개원냠네 지간 쇼르바다 초로 세우라데 대자 대단 저와 되는 저와 미 현다지레 콘로 사와레 소소기 초로들레 콘로선에 디바 채와레 제데 참벌 수버지게 남균이다 라마치들 왕님도 쉬 되는게 안 너무 쉬어야 되는게 개외 차오 주야게 다 초로 참벌 수버지바스 안 되는게 제래야 안 게 제바나 되는게 안에 디바 채와레 사시 송거
To explain this term, who perfectly observes their celibacy. So probably it's not quite as literal as this would appear to us. Who it refers to is if one generates anger towards someone with whom one has a Dharma connection, such as someone whom one receives an initiation from and bodhisattva vows from. So such a person, if one is angry towards them, one creates a great non-virtue. And even heavier than that is being angry at a bodhisattva. So this is then the meaning of this term towards those who perfectly observe their celibacy.
창바 죄바시나 창바 세대다 창바 상여고바 특별 제도 주름이 냠네 돈바 쉬시 주름 송대 경기 강사지라 안에 창바 죄바셔야 되는 곳으로 창바 상기에 고마 특별 제도 가르치고서 주름 송제 돈바 쉬 주름 송되게 되는게 송되게라 안에 미션 강사 되는 규모질에 콘사와래 되는게 강사질라 안에 지게 참보 전주 선바다 전주 선비 돈바다 되네기 안에 소터기 돈바라서 송제 되네기 냠는 제팅질라 콘사바는 디바치기 돼야지 도수에는 용으로
The meaning
참보 줘봐야 될 저 참보 줘봐야 저 참보 줘봐는 대시 최저지 대나 참보 줘봐시리 참바 상기고 봐 특별 치료도 안디 냠렌디 자와 안 수림라서 봐 냠는 술렌제 론주 핸들라 참보 줘봐서 내내게 돌래 다 도시는 주시오래.
So to explain then this term, perfectly observe their celibacy, because this is literally what it says, but it has a meaning that really isn't apparent from that, is that a person who's perfectly observing their celibacy, it doesn't mean that literally. It means someone who is observing or keeping excellent ethics in order to become a Buddha for the sake of others. That is what it's referring to. So it comes down not so much to perfectly observing celibacy, but more than that, it comes down to the meaning of why they are doing so. And then moreover, in this context here, in terms of the negativity, one has a dharma connection with them, such as, for example, one receives vows to them or initiation from them and so forth. So when one has a dharma connection with such a person who is guarding their ethics excellently in order to become a Buddha, if one is angry at them, it is greatly non-virtuous.
Dele jan Geshe lu chowa ni shindu che se de ji she ba na shin je de na ge da jen Geshe chen ju sen ba le kong ra sa ba ne di ba shin che ba le yes. yin ge ma de ji dang dong ba sung gan la so ji chang ba chu ba zu ba jia la ne dan sang yi zen de dong ba xu xie se ta gi dong ba song ba le ane de han ji chen ju sen be dong ba song ya yong ru wa 얘네 한 참바 총바지야세 양직 남아지스네 원 염두 쉐쉐 조 데니기 냠네지간 조 참바 총바지라지다 참바 총바지바디 데니기 되어 시우르바디 디로아 창바 시대 창바야 상지고 상지 상바 녀모 바샤데 제바 방비게 창바 상지 니 고방 토비 치도 가르치고선 베지지 제바스는 냠nen 제바스 오르와 제바스는 배능아주 제바스는 롱 제바스요로와 롱 제바스는 칼라산의 롱 제바로와 개회 냠수진의 롱 제바스 제바스 제가 디톱에 치도 제바텔라 롱 제바 참바 충벌 제바스요라 참바 제바 참바 총바 참바다 참비고 고바다 대단 dwimbige 냠nen 제바텔라 총벌 제바스요로와 제가 디니기 제웬텔라 아니 라메치세 원시 냠nen 제한 요를 제시심에 동바시 냠nen 제가 용거 디소 조 참바 총바 조 최조 상기 고방 특别치도 안에 최님의 제 최조 소로와 내링이 제시게 돼 저는 직수에 나는 직과 차기 있는 말 하고 마땅히 제시게 되려도나
그래서 고소 직 주나 참바처바 직 주나 되네 대답 싶다 ini de shipsapos sen de ne considerare josicena de ne karan shipta
je changba lamna la changba so래 la changba la 고래 상제 la 고래 changba se 가르 chang바레스 녀모모 바샤는 제바 펑바 chang바들데 밀레 초도 규바들 changba so래 la changba se 제자데 딜레 초도 규바 상제데 changba 데디 changba 세디 사창바시 지딘벨라 창바들 고고 말에 상기 고방 상기를 고고래 제자다 상기 고방 토비 치르도 중바시의 상기 고방 토비 치르 대당 튠비게 냠는 제야디 냠는 제바들 쥐바서 창바 총바 쥐바서래 니 냠는 제 쥐바들 라메 직전에 왕슈이제 소소님들 주 왕이 냠는 제인들라 조 창바 총바 쥐바라 그래
아니 그래서 직접 간에 lapsang 아직 사마다 넘리가 직전에 되는 카라다 싶어 사마다 남들 also Japa Dompa, also Kimita Dante Bate. Die Konstantin Japa hier.
제자디 니 제자다 창바 총바 쥐바세 창바 총바 쥐바세데 소타기 dom바데 제주신비 dom바레 냠네제 창바 총바 쥐바라세 제자 라마지기 전에 왕슈이제 냠네제바나 조 창바 총바 쥐바세 장제 창바세데 상기고바 디토베체도 비위 냠네제바들 고고다
observe their celibacy. Yeah, it perfectly observes their celibacy. When you take the three Tibetan words together, you come out with perfectly observe their celibacy. What it means is, in detail, is quite a lot deeper than that. So the first word is that can be translated as celibacy is also the word for the deity or the god Brahma. It's also a word that can be translated for Buddha or Nirvana or whole and complete. So it's quite a broad word. That's the first. So here, in terms of the deeper meaning, we can take it not as celibacy, but that perhaps of Nirvana or even Buddhahood. And then the second term is that of similar to or likewise. And the third term is that of conduct or behavior. So like in the text, Bodhisattva's way of life, that word way of life is also Bodhisattva deeds or Bodhisattva conduct, Bodhisattva behavior. So this word behavior or conduct. So when you look at the words individually, you get the deeper meaning of what Geshe is bringing out. There is conduct or behavior that leads to the attainment of nirvana, nirvana in the sense of non-abiding nirvana, Buddhahood. So that is the type of person, the person who is engaging in behavior that leads to Buddhahood. So this is what is being referred to here. So someone who's, this is the deeper meaning of this term, perfectly observe their celibacy. And so the behavior will refer to any behavioral conduct that is required in order to attain Buddhahood. So that's quite a deeper meaning than maybe the more literal, perfectly observing their celibacy. And again then to what is meant in this line, if one has a Dharma connection with such a person, established perhaps through receiving initiation or vows, then being angry at such a person, someone who is engaging in the various activities to become a Buddha, this will lead to great negativity. And such a person may well be a bodhisattva, but they may also not be a bodhisattva. But if such a person is not a bodhisattva, then the negativity is less than getting angry at an actual bodhisattva. So the text continues, even heavier than getting angry at someone with whom you have a Dharma connection with, and that person whom is engaging in the various activities in order to become a Buddha, but not yet a bodhisattva. Even getting angry at such a person, whilst greatly negative, is not as negative as getting angry at a bodhisattva. That's the end of the sentence. And then Lama Tsongkhapa quotes from the King of Concentration Sutra, and I've just changed my own preference, one word in the last line. If someone harbors harmful intent for another, ethical conduct or studying cannot protect him, nor can meditative concentration or solitude, nor generosity or venerating the Buddha. So looking at the first line, if someone harbors harmful intent for another. So here the way to understand this for another is it's referring to the kind of person referred to above, translated as perfectly observe their celibacy. So someone with whom you have a Dharma connection with, someone you've received vows from, someone you've perhaps received initiation from, someone who's engaging the various deeds that will lead to Buddhahood. So if one gets angry at such a person, so that's the meaning of the first line. So if one harbors harmful intent for such a person, your ethical conduct cannot protect you from this non-virtue, nor can your education in the Dharma, nor can your meditative concentration or retreating to solitude, nor practicing generosity to ordinary beings or to Buddhas, venerating the Buddha. None of this will be able to protect you from the non-virtue created by harmful intent towards such a person. The meaning then of what we've looked at here, great strength by way of the attitude, is that our motivation makes an immense difference in terms of how much virtue or non-virtue we accumulate. And then the second part we looked at is amongst the non-virtuous motivations, that of anger is particularly harmful. And anger itself leads to non-virtue, but if the object towards whom that anger is directed, that too can make does make a great difference in terms of the amount of non-virtue accumulated. So both the affliction of anger as well as towards whom the anger is directed. So this then brings us to the end of a section. We've been looking at the heaviness of karma. So we've looked at that from two perspectives, last time and now this time. And this comes to and brings us through the section we're still looking at, non-virtuous actions and their effects. So we've looked at the non-virtuous actions a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, at the 10 non-virtues. And now we come to a presentation of their effects. This started from the outline in our books from page 123. So now we come to a presentation of their effects. So whether a karmic result, an effect, is one of happiness or suffering, a virtuous result, or a result from virtue or a result from non-virtue, then it has 3 points. The fully ripened effect, the effect concordant with the cause, and the dominant or environmental effect. So they're two different in Tibetan words. They have the same meaning. One is translated as dominant, one is environmental, but the meaning would be the same. So if we think of the 10 non-virtues that we looked at a month ago, so those 10 non-virtues, when accumulated completely, lead to the potential of ripening a fully ripened effect. So the first of the 3 types of effects, a fully ripened effect. And a fully ripened effect has 3 parts. So this means that the fully ripened effects can be one that's powerful, middling, or minor, or weak. And when we think of the 4 components that make up a complete karmic action, that of basis, intention, and basis, attitude, performance, and completion, there was quite some variety in there. So, for example, in terms of intention, there was the affliction. So there are different types of afflictions. Most of the 10 non-virtues, any of the 3 root afflictions could be applied, but they can be of greater intensity or lesser intensity. So therefore, from that difference, or the difference in terms of the basis, or performance, or performance, then the result, the fully ripened result, can be particularly powerful, middling, or weaker. So, for example, if one accrues the non-virtuous karmic act of killing, one accrues a complete non-virtuous karmic act. If this was a powerful misdeed, because of the various combinations of those 4 components, it was a powerful non-virtuous imprint. If it ripens as a rebirth, its fully ripened effect will be strong, and it will lead to rebirth in the hells. If those 4 components are of middling strength, leading to a karmic imprint of middling strength, its fully ripened effect will lead to rebirth as a spirit. And if those 4 components lead to a weaker non-virtuous imprint from killing being accumulated, its fully ripened effect will be weaker, leading to rebirth as an animal. So this little bit we've covered here in terms of the effects or results ties very nicely to what we've looked at this weekend. That by looking at the result and the way results come about, this further reinforces our understanding in terms of causes and the various components that go into the accumulation of a cause. And then what we've looked at in between that, what makes a cause heavy or light. So here, the way to take this and incorporate in your own meditations, in your own training, is to cultivate a motivation of bodhicitta before every day and before one engages in virtuous activity. In particular, as one goes through the day engaging in various virtuous activities, remind oneself of that motivation of bodhicitta cultivated that morning. Because the motivation of bodhicitta has as its objective the attainment of Buddhahood. And why do you want to attain Buddhahood? For the benefit of others. So you becoming a Buddha, clearly you will benefit. But your focus on why you want to do that is for others. Then within this motivation one has the object of all sentient beings. And here one is cultivating the recognition that all sentient beings matter. They all have value to me, not some more than others. All equally matter. Therefore, how I engage with them matters. And this cultivation in this motivation, we can see how later it will help prevent us from acting in a non-virtuous manner and creating non-virtue, because one is developing a tenderness, a closeness towards others. And then there's this ongoing development of the motivation of bodhicitta. One will be very clear on what is virtuous, what is non-virtuous, and how to help others, not wanting to add to their suffering, but wanting to be of benefit to them. So this greatly helps our meditations on ethics and generosity and patience, whereby we are not wanting to harm others, but we are wanting to benefit them. So this is expressions of ethics and generosity, and aids our meditations on patience, not wanting to harm others, but to respond to them with care and kindness. So in this way, by cultivating a motivation of bodhicitta, one is protecting oneself from engaging in harm towards others and encouraging oneself to engage with others in a way that is truly beneficial. So this then I encourage you to take and incorporate into your daily training, your daily meditations. And then thank you. We can conclude there for this weekend. Thank you.